Hey everybody, this is Feder from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make your Aquila 3D printer or similar printer significantly more capable with two easy and inexpensive modifications. Let's get going. Alright, so to make your printer significantly more useful, you're going to have to get two really inexpensive modifications. Number one is grab yourself a hardened steel nozzle. Here I have a little bundle of 0.4 millimeter hardened steel nozzles. They're actually really inexpensive and fits the bill since this is a budget printer, budget nozzles. However, if you want to upgrade your printer with the highest quality stuff, I highly suggest you guys checking out Zodiac3D.com and Zodiac nozzles. These guys put in so much effort and so much beautiful machining and just skills and R&D into a nozzle. It's crazy. The results are unbelievable. This is actually from a Kickstarter that I backed, and this is a V6 style nozzle that's going to go in the printer above. But since, like I said, this is a budget printer, budget nozzles, I'll have a link to purchase these things. Check them out. The second thing that you're going to need to buy is a PTFE tube that's rated for high temperatures. TechBoss in this example goes all the way up to 300, and one package was able to do my Ender, my custom printer up top here with a giant Bowden, and my ANET ET5X, and there is enough for this printer, at least replacing the entire thing, just removing this one and replacing it. There's more than enough for that, so that's a major benefit. Essentially, these modifications allow you to print higher temperatures for long periods of time. You can do this with the stock setup. However, over time, you're going to start off-gassing this PTFE tube. It's going to start to get burned on the tip. It's going to deform, and it's going to cause all kinds of clogs. The other issue that develops with printing with these machines is the PTFE tube fittings that are both on the hot end and on the extruder block. They develop a little bit of play, and when the printer is retracting, these things are constantly moving here and there a little bit over and over again, and they're going to cause all kinds of inconsistencies and issues. And that's because when you have your nozzle and you have your PTFE tube and it's moving even ever so gently away, molten filament develops around that area, causing clogs, inconsistent layer lines, causing all kinds of quality issues. And one way to solve that is to essentially line your hot end with a PTFE tube that's rated for higher temperatures like this. And that's achieved with this little tiny washer that I'll include a link. You can print this in PLA. However, I like to print these in ABS or PETG. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off the hot end. We're going to cut this down to size. We're going to put in our nozzle. We're going to butt this up against the nozzle. We're going to put in our little fitting, our little washer, and we're going to screw in the PTFE tube fitting, and it's going to squish a piece of this tube inside the hot end, essentially getting rid of or eliminating the issue of potentially getting clogs due to movement in your PTFE tube fittings. So let's get this printer out of here. I'm going to get it somewhere where you can see. And I'm going to take the hot end apart, and let's get this done. All right, you're going to need a couple things. I like to keep all my Allen wrenches that come with a printer near me. Stock screwdriver to remove this shroud. You're going to need the little wrench that fits your nozzle. I think it's a 8 millimeter as well. I have a cutter here that's meant to cut PTFE tubes. You can cut this with a razor or snips. Just be sure that this is exactly 90 degrees when you cut it. Otherwise, you will have issues. Because this is going to be butting up against the nozzle, it has to be completely flat. So just keep that in mind. I also have an adjustable wrench to hold the block when you remove the nozzle. That'll keep things a little simpler. So here's how we get started. We need to remove this. We need to get things a little bit hotter so they're easy to remove. There is a silicone sock that needs to be removed as well. So first, here, let's go ahead and go to settings. We're going to scroll down to temperature, nozzle temperature, and let's put it up to about 160 or so. That should be hot enough. Let's go back. And while this thing is heating up, let's take off this shroud. All right, so while you do this, keep in mind that things are getting really hot. So there is a chance that you can burn yourself, so just be careful. There is a single self-tapping screw, a Phillips head, that's on the back here, right in between the two wheels. That takes off the shroud. It should be really easy to do. There you go, and I like to pull it up here and set it on top just to get it out of the way. Now things are exposed. I take the little screwdriver and let's just get rid of the silicone sock. I'm using this because this is getting really hot. All right, now let's get an adjustable wrench on this block, and I like to go from the side like this because if you try to go head on, you have a chance of damaging the heating element and the thermistor. You don't want that. So there we go. Now that I have the block, I'm gonna take my little wrench here and righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. All right, now that I broke it loose, I can remove this and do the rest by hand. There you go, and now that it's coming apart, I can go ahead and do a cool down on the printer. Control, scroll all the way down, cool down. Okay, now that that's off, I'm gonna pull this little clip from the fitting. What you essentially wanna do is use your kind of fingers to push down on the black little pin. If that doesn't work, you can use your little wrench here and pull up. Look at that, it's actually super tough to do. So here's what we're gonna do. If you have this same issue, we're just gonna remove this fitting, and you have a wrench for this that came with the printer. And let's see if I can pull this tube out. There we go. Okay, so actually, look at that. After printing ABS and PETG and all this, the PTFE tube is yellowing a bit, but it's not that bad. I've seen much worse. So that's a good thing. Okay, so one way to get these fittings off is squeeze that black piece down, and then you should be able to pull the tubing. Sometimes there's little lips here and there, like for example, there's this little lip from constantly bending and flexing, so it might be tough to remove. I'm just gonna see if I can overpower that area. I might not be able to actually. Yeah, sometimes you either have to go the opposite direction with these or cut them off. I technically really want to avoid going all the way up because I don't want to take my block off here. Although if you have PTFE tube fittings up there, this part would be really, really easy. All right, here we go, I got past it. Okay. So there you go, here's our fitting. There's nothing wrong with this particular fitting, but what we're gonna do is essentially take our little washer, our little printed washer, and we're gonna be dropping it in to the hot end. And we're gonna be squishing it in there. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We are going to install, let me touch this hot end, see if it's hot. I mean, this nozzle, it's not. All right, so here's a little comparison. Exact same threads, exact same distance. Looks like our nozzle is a little bit longer, our new nozzle at the tip, which is fine. We'll just have to re-level the bed. So careful here once again. Things are still likely pretty hot down here. I'm gonna reach under very slowly. I'm gonna thread in this nozzle. Essentially, when you tighten this all the way up, there should be a tiny, tiny gap left between the nozzle and the actual block. I'll go ahead and hold it and tighten her up. There we go, that's tight. Keep in mind it's cold. You do want to tighten it up when it's hot. Let me get you a better shot of the nozzle, just so you can see the gap underneath. There we go. So you see that little gap underneath? That's about how much you want. If you don't have a gap like that underneath, there's two screws to the left and right of that nozzle, and you can adjust them. If you don't have that gap, I would definitely suggest you taking this off completely and doing it off the printer just for ease of use. Go ahead and put you back. Okay, now that the nozzle is fairly tight, keep in mind, like I said, it's cold. You want to do that hot, so we're going to tighten things up after we cut this to size. All right, a good way to measure this is to take some a piece of filament. I'm going to straighten it out as much as I can. And when you put it in there, go up against one of the walls until you hit the what feels like the nozzle right there. And get to the bottom of it right here. Pull it out. Let's go ahead and measure. So somewhere around 33. Here to double check, I'm going to take my fitting, push it in there pretty hard, take it out, measure. About 34 looks like. So let's say 34. It doesn't have to be exact, by the way. So if that's 34, how much is this? That's to the top of this. The fitting itself, the threads are roughly 4.9, so about 5. Let's see. Yep. So we need a piece of tubing that's 29 millimeters long, and that's going to get us to the bottom of the threads where we can squish it down with the little printed washer. Just double check. Yeah, around 35 it looks like. So 30, 29, 30. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to cut it to 30 and let's go from there. There we go. So we got a perfectly cut piece to 30. If we put that in, that should sit below the threads, just below the threads. Let's see how it all fits. I'm gonna drop that in there. Take my screwdriver, just gently push. It's definitely sitting above the threads, which is nice. Then we're gonna take our little washer that we printed, put it on top, push it down, and it's actually sitting right on top of the filament. You don't want to push too hard. You don't want to damage the printed piece. Let me take a little light that I have here. Actually, just use the flashlight on my phone. Look inside. Yep, that's right up against. Here, let me show you what we're looking at here. There we go. So if you can tell, that plastic washer that we printed is now sitting right on top of the tube. You can kind of see it right there. That's what you want. And we want these threads over here to be left over so that we can put in our fitting. All right, let me get you back. All right, so now that that's in there, we can go ahead and thread this back on. And keep in mind, this is not going to be able to thread all the way back into where it was because we have that piece in there, and that's okay. That's what we want. Now, you also don't want to over tighten this. Over tightening this means that you're going to be flexing that tube inside the hot end, and you definitely don't want that to happen. Yeah, like right there, it's getting tight, and that's it. I'm not going to push it whatsoever. So now we have ourselves a PTFE tube lined hot end. So inside of there, from this fitting all the way down to the tip of the nozzle, we have a super high quality 300C max PTFE tube. And the rest of this could be the stock tube, which I'm going to cut down, by the way, because I just don't like this little rough piece, and we don't need nearly as much anymore. So I'm going to use this tool just to cut that off so it's easier to deal with. But yeah, so now what the next steps are to heat up the hot end again. I like to do about 160, and what that's going to do is it's going to let us fully tighten this nozzle. So I'm going to go to setting, temperature, nozzle temperature. Let's do 160 again. There we go, 160. Go back, give it a little while. All right, once this warms up, I'm going to go ahead and tighten that. Now that the nozzle is hot, I'm gonna get my adjustable wrench again. Get it on top of that. And we're just gonna give the nozzle a tightening. There we go. So now I know that 100% that tube that's in there is pressed up against the nozzle, and everything is nice and tight and there's no movement. That should be perfect. I just went ahead and straightened that out. Let's go back to our screen here. Let's go back to control, all the way down to cool down, and let this thing start cooling. Meanwhile here, I know that the tip is hot, so please be careful doing this, but I'm gonna go ahead and get the sock back on. There we go. And this thing definitely helps keep the temperatures away from other parts, and also keep things nice and hot faster. All right, the next step is to put the shroud back on. Actually, it's not. It's actually to put this PTFE tube in. I'm gonna hold this down. There we go. It doesn't need to go that far. Remember, all that it's doing now is just going straight down to our little spacer, and that's where it's gonna meet. And then we're gonna put this little clip back in. This definitely helps keep things straight and tight. There we go. Okay. Now that clip is really underneath, and that's not moving at all. So if there's no budging here and there's no budging here, you're gonna have a better, tighter system. That's the goal. All right, now that we got this in, everything is nice and tight. I'm gonna go ahead and put the stock shroud back on here. Get that screw in from the back. It's right in between the wheels. Can only go in one way. Ding. Get your little flathead on here. That's it, guys. Now you have to re-level the bed and your printer is ready to rock. Let's put this thing down there. So there you go, everybody. Really easy modification. Even easier if you don't want to line your hot end with the PTFE tube and instead just want to replace the whole tube. In my opinion, it's worth doing because it's two birds, one stone. You're already messing with the tube. You might as well go ahead, open it, cut it to size. It worked for me at 30. And looks like it would be a drop in. You don't even have to measure and do a research. All these hot ends are really similar, if not exactly the same. So as you can see, it's printing behind me. I leveled it. It leveled perfectly. It's printing perfectly. Actually, let me go ahead and give you a closer look so you can see it live. There you go. Absolutely no issues. Nice and flat, no bubbles. I mean, you know, that's really what makes this printer special, I think, is the quality you're getting for such an affordable machine is incredible. And now that you have a hardened nozzle and a PTFE lined hot end with high temperature PTFE tube, means you can print high temperatures without worrying about any kind of off-gassing or ruining your PTFE tube, or your PTFE tubes PTFE fittings failing on you at the hot end and causing clogs. This is just a must-have modification, if you ask me. Right there, along with the extruder block modification as well. I think those are, they're not a requirement, obviously. Not everyone is going to have this issue, but I see it everywhere. I see it all over the place. Probably the most common issue with the printer is the block itself, and all the fittings are related. They're really close second in terms of issues. So now you know you can print high temperatures. The only other thing left to make this printer at the utmost next level here is the fact that it's limited by its firmware. And I know there is a ton of firmware in development right now. I'm watching one specifically pretty close. And I'll probably likely do a video on it because it will enable amazing things like higher temperatures, higher step count if you want to put in a dual gear extruder, different color customizations. The most important other feature on this printer would be manual bed mesh leveling, my absolute favorite feature on my other printer. That could be enabled. PID tuning could be enabled. Literally taking this thing and making it a pro printer just with firmware. So as it sits right now, I'm pretty confident that I would be able to print other types of exotic filament, not just PLA, PLA+, but PETG, ABS, nylons, copas, all kinds of alloys. I'm really excited. We're gonna give it a try. I actually have a poll going right now. If you go to my channel and see the poll, go ahead and vote for which type of filament you'd like to see me print next, whether it's wood or glow in the dark or nylon. There's other ones that I didn't add in there because they're a little less popular, like carbon fiber, polypropylene, for example. Would be really nice for automotive use, printing anything that needs to be resistant to heat or potentially certain chemicals, or even just abrasion or impact. So things like that. I'm ready. The printer is now ready, and you can have your printer ready with just a few things. All these things that you saw here today are going to be linked in the description. They're affiliate links from my Amazon. You don't pay anything for them by using them, but I get a tiny, tiny kickback that definitely helps me move this channel along and helps me make videos for you guys. All right, if you like the video, give me a like. If you know somebody who would find this useful, share the video with them. And as always, I'll see you guys down in the comments. Ask away, and I will answer. See you later.